to another episode of the Power Up podcast. In this week's episode, I'm joined by my very good friend, Susie O'Gorman, and longtime partner in crime in business. And we are going to talk about the all-important subject of pitching, winning work, whatever you want to do. If you are involved in any shape or form in having to win revenue, convert opportunities and prospects into paying clients, whether you're working for a big corporate, working for a smaller organization, or working for yourself, we are going to walk through our experience of working with clients, I think some 30 years each now, Susie, right? Yeah, that's
yes.
Time.
You did start pretty early, Martin.
And, we get into conversations with people about how to pitch your story in such a way that it really resonates with a client the first time, because that's what it has to do. And there are 100% some things you can do that can help you tip the balance in your favor. We often say that, particularly in the world of competitive pitching and winning work, very rarely does one competitor win over the other by a country mile. So therefore, it would be fair to say, in fact, I would say that they're actually winning more likely by the finest of margins, meaning that somebody is actually losing by the finest of margins. And our work in a particular part of our business called the Win Academy is to help clients understand where those margins are. And that is the work that Susie and I have done multiple times together. And we have discovered a great deal, and we're very passionate about this particular subject. And we love working together on it. We love working with clients on it. And today is about sharing some of those insights with you that you can go and apply immediately. And I would suggest get very immediate results. What do you say to that, Susie?
Yep, I absolutely think that they should grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, depending on what time they're listening to this. Get comfy and let's dive in.
So what we're going to talk about is we're going to look at why some seemingly good pitches, in other words, you've got a good argument, you've got a good reasoning, you've got actually a good story to tell. Why do they suddenly sometimes fall flat? How to bring some discipline to the application of pitching. Because there are certain disciplines that when they're applied and you do them consistently will make a huge difference. We're going to touch on storytelling as the ultimate, well, I would describe as the ultimate secret weapon. And we'll talk a little bit about what we describe as win rate optimization. So how do you optimize your process to win more? And we're going to offer you some of our insights, our real takeaway insights that we've learned through helping clients in this endeavor. So let's talk about why, when on the surface, you think, wow, that's a really great idea, great proposal, great concept. Why do some of those just fall flat at the final hurdle? What's your thoughts on that, Susie?
I think of the pitches that you and I have seen and worked on over the last 20 years plus, we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah. And I think there are definitely some themes around where it does fall flat. And actually, for me, there's three areas. The first of which being one that happens before you even get to the pitch. So the word would be curiosity, a genuine desire to really understand the client, their needs, wants, desires, their issues, their motivators. And I'm constantly surprised when asked to work with pretty seasoned teams, and we go in there to help as part of the preparation process and their rehearsals, and it becomes abundantly clear they've made a lot of assumptions, they've not drilled down beyond the obvious. And imagine presenting a solution where you're not even clear on the decision-making criteria, the boxes that the client is going to judge us on, the boxes that we need to tick. So I'd say curiosity and making sure people have got the insights into the client, I think, is one of the biggest fails I consistently see, and people just work too much on assumptions.
Okay, so we'll talk about how we do that in a moment. Okay, what's the second one?
I think other than curiosity, I'd say creativity. So I think many pitches are, technically they have, the detail, but it's boring.
Mm.
And I often talk to clients that are, involved in live pitches, and they often say to me, gosh, if this is how this team shows up when they're meant to be at their absolute best, do I really want to be working in close partnership with these guys? And I say guys as girls and boys, with them over the next X number of years. So I think creativity, an area which a lot of teams just tend to play too safe.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. They play it safe because they're nervous. It's like playing a game defensively. Yeah, you're safe and you're not going to upset anybody, but you're not going to win either. Mm. You're not taking any bold risks. And we are constantly encouraging people to try to do something different that is appropriate and relevant, not just being frivolous about it and putting some wacky, ridiculous, statement or approach in there that bears no relevance to their situation. But providing you have something which is relevant, you can be creative. And my goodness me, does a client really appreciate it, particularly if you're sat there on the receiving end of potentially having on a beauty parade, listening to 5 or 6 clients come in and pitch for this particular work. It's dull for them if they're all the same and predictable. What was your third one there, Susie?
I think my third one would have to be conviction. And when I say conviction, it's not necessarily just being conviction around their message. It's one thing being confident in your message, but do you really have conviction in your desire to work with this client? So, in fact, Martin, you and I were working with a group not quite so long ago. Mm. And at the end of the presentation, I asked the lead, do you really want this business? And they said, well, yes, of course. Mm. And I asked them, are you genuinely excited to work with this client? And they said, well, yes. It's almost as if I was asking a stupid question. They said, yes, of course we do. I said, are you really excited to work with them? Yes, they said. Mm. I said, well, you may want to let your face know. Because on the receiving end, it felt like they were going through the emotions. Playing the role of the client, I wanted to see the kind of conviction in the message and the passion. And I wanted not only to feel that they really wanted to work with us, but I wanted them to say it as well.
So 3 very clear messages there, Susie. Curiosity, an insatiable desire to want to understand the client. The second thing is don't be dull, don't be boring, be creative. So creativity. And then finally, conviction. Let me know you actually want the business. In attempting to explain what we do effectively well and where we sit in the sales cycle, and excuse me for people that are listening to this and are tired of any analogy which references to football, brace yourself for a moment. But let me use this. This seems to see people do this, even non-football anyway, people understand this. You've got to wrestle the ball away from your competition. You then got to take that ball up the field. You've got to get through the midfield. And then you are now finally in that final third of the pitch. So from a sales point of view or a relationship building point of view, you've earned the right. You've found the client. You've worked with them. You've probably had lots and lots of conversations back and forth. And here you are now, find yourself having potentially been actually down selected to the final 3, 2 or 3, possibly 2 or 3. And here you are now faced with the final line of defense, metaphorically, to put the ball in the back of the net. And that's the bit that, whilst we do work further up the pitch, helping people design their pitch, getting their story right, it's this final third where quite often, sadly, having done all of that work, people let themselves down through not putting together a really powerful presentation. And that's specifically what we're talking about. Not to say we don't do the other stuff, because we do, but in this particular conversation, we're really focused on that final third and to help people win that business by being outstanding having outstanding strikers, if you like, and having the skill to get past that final defensive line. So a couple of things I would probably add to your list in doing that. What is it that causes these pitches to fall flat? I do think that not speaking in the language of the highest benefit, and people make the mistake of thinking that they're actually talking to the client about how they're going to benefit, but they haven't gone further enough. They are not really using what I would call very retail language. They start using too much wholesale language. They're talking about their business and the intricacies of it and the technical aspects of it. And quite often in those final pitches, you will find people who are not your technical buyers, but they're actually the people that are going to use the product, use the service. And if you aren't speaking the language of the business, they can have a big influence. Oh, we really like Team B. Why? Oh, because they really understood. I could really see myself working with them, and they seem to understand what we actually did. They talked stories. They spoke about situations that I'm often find myself in. So I really think they've got a real resonance with us. So what they're doing is they're talking what I call in very retail terms, and people obviously find that easy to listen to and to buy to. So that's a key thing. And then the second thing perhaps is the power of storytelling, which we are going to talk about. You talked about creativity. Stories allow ourselves to be creative. We can use metaphors, anecdotes, etc. So the bravery to turn your very, as you described it, a very rational, logical, but dull pitch into something that actually is a story that people immediately understand. That is very, very powerful. And quite often people either don't know how to do it, don't believe enough in it, feel awkward doing it because they're not maybe very good at it. And all they're really lacking is an understanding of why they're so powerful and a formula and an approach. So that's not a bad place to start. We talk about how we describe our approach is what we call the 10 disciplines of pitching. And by the way, anyone listening to this, don't get too carried away with the word pitching per se. You could interchange it with the word presenting, having a conversation, because in the world of pitching now, it's more likely we're having lots of conversations that lead to somebody saying, I want to buy from you. So don't think, a big grandiose, 45-minute army of people there, 150 slides pitch. It's any situation where you are finally presenting your ideas to the buying audience for them to decide. And you potentially have been invited as one of other people to that opportunity, or it could just be a singular opportunity. But nonetheless, you still got to convince people to buy from you and go with what you are offering them. Because it could be
about influencing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Influencing the outcome.
Gently influencing people to have the confidence to buy your ideas and your service or your product. So the 10 disciplines of pitching, as I was saying, they're not necessarily 10 things that you haven't heard before. What we find is that it's the level of discipline people bring to those things and actually whether or not they do them. So, for example, everybody knows that rehearsals make you better, but people don't always discipline themselves around doing the rehearsal. Or when they do the rehearsal, they don't have everybody there. There are people missing. So it's not a very disciplined approach. So bringing more discipline and rigor to these 10 areas, which we'll describe, really does make a big difference. So the first set of disciplines, if you think sort of planning, preparation, and performance, planning is about creating the story. Preparation is about preparing the story. And then performance is about actually telling the story. What we describe as great stories, really well told. But you could be a great storyteller, but if your story doesn't make sense to the audience, it doesn't matter how entertaining you are or how articulate you are, eloquent you are, if it's not resonating with them, then it's not going to work. So where do we start in terms of creating that story? It starts with really knowing your client. And you alluded to this a few moments ago, Susie. So what kind of things, when you spoke earlier, you said people go to everybody knows they need to know their client. But what you were alluding to earlier is the level of when you turn up for these pitches, you're just sort of sitting there thinking, they don't really know them at the right level.
Yeah.
So what sort of things are they perhaps do they need to do that they're perhaps not doing? And how do we help them with that?
Well, I think it's moving beyond the obvious. And the obvious things are the rational stuff, which is
The things they've asked for.
the things they've asked for.
Yeah.
Product or service. And in my experience, people tend to be pretty good at asking the right questions to get to the root of that. I guess where we see people have more difficulty or maybe less confidence to kind of go there is really scratching beneath the surface and understanding for you, if you were my client, Martin, have I really got to the root of not only what you want, but why you want it? What are your emotional, psychological needs or drivers? And are we asking the right questions to uncover them? And it's not a simple question like, so, what are your motivators, Martin? Because that would sound a bit strange and it's unlikely to give me what I need. So it's the art of asking good quality questions, of drilling down, of knowing when you've got to the root and when you've got to ask more questions without it being like an interrogation. Of course, all of this happens before the pitch itself. And as well as knowing their needs, wants, desires, and issues, the number one area I find that people just don't have clarity on is the decision-making criteria. In selecting a partner, Martin, to work with on ... whatever it is, what is most important to you? What are you looking for?
I tell you what, Susie, as you well know, I have recently bought myself a little toy.
Definitely, listeners, it's definitely not a midlife crisis. I can
100% not a midlife crisis.
Yes.
But that's a process I've just gone through.
Yep.
So why don't you take me through, just by way of demonstration, see if I can answer these questions about why did I end up with the bike that I actually bought.
So, Martin, I know you mentioned last time I saw you that you were considering buying something on two wheels.
Indeed.
And of course, there's such a lot of choice out there. So when you're making the decision as to what two-wheel vehicle you were going to get, what was important to you?
Well, I'm a little bit in love with the idea of getting back on a bike after many, many years. So there's quite a lot of excitement there about, it was probably, I'm in, my early 60s now, and I probably last drove a bike when I was about 20. So it's just a big gap, right?
Yeah.
And a number of my friends locally have bikes, and they drive ride fairly big bikes, Harley Ds, Triumphs, etc. Not kind of racy type bikes. And I kind of like this idea of owning a Harley. I wasn't necessarily start off, I'm definitely going to buy a Harley Davidson. I wanted to kind of feel like there's a slight bit of romance about it.
Yeah.
Right? I wanted to feel good on this thing. If I'm going to go back on two wheels and go through all the safety stuff and, I wanted to feel good. Yeah. So feeling good was certainly one of the things. I think comfort was another, I wanted to feel comfortable on this thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to feel safe. Very, very important, particularly for my wife, who was not most excited as me about this idea and was enamored about me getting a bike. So safety, feeling safe on it.
Yep.
Well, I definitely wanted to look a bit sexy. Not me, I'm talking about the bike, right?
Go on, Martin. Yes,
there are some ugly bikes out there, right? Yeah. I love the sort of more traditional. I used to have what was called a BSA Gold Star, an old British bike, but it's more traditional. So I like the more traditional bikes.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like from the very beginning of you looking into the options, it sounds as if you were quite in love with the idea of a Harley from the beginning.
I kept asking myself the question when I say to people, what bike have you bought? There was part of me that definitely wanted to say, maybe for all the wrong reasons, I bought a Harley Davidson. And it actually does get quite a strong reaction. When you say to people you bought a Harley Davidson, I do think there is, talk about it being a love brand.
Yes.
And I actually had it on my vision board as well. I've got a vision board. Wife and I did a year and a half ago, and I put it on there. And I had a kind of idea in my head that, I wanted this lovely, traditional, beautiful looking, lovely lines Harley.
And I'm curious, you talked earlier on about the romance of it. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I guess Harleys have got a long history of, it's sort of, you've got this image of riding out on a long road. It's not something you sling around corners with your knee out. It's something you roll around a corner on, nice and gentle, fine weather rider, going down to the coast, puttering along the country lanes or down to the seafront. So there's that slight glamorous,
elegance,
elegant, and they're beautiful things. It just look gorgeous. You look at it and you go, wow, like you could eat that. It's that good. Yeah.
So out of curiosity, was there really any other bike that was a true contender when you were making
Triumphs? Yeah. I did like Triumphs, and I did go and test drive a Triumph as well.
So when you were making this decision between the Triumph and the Harley, of all of the things that you've talked about, which was the most important to you?
The feeling of owning a Harley.
And why was that so important?
Because I thought if I'm going to get a bike, the first bike for a number of years, it felt like a good decision. All right. It just felt like a good, how would it make me feel knowing I've got a Harley and I'm a part of the Hog Harley Owners Club, whatever it's called. And, what would it look like sitting in my garage? And the sound of it.
Oh.
The sound of it is, they're fantastic. They've got a very distinctive sound.
Yeah.
And the comfort of riding it. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of reasons. And actually, interesting enough, when I asked you why the Harley, it was interesting that finding the words seemed a little bit difficult at that point, but your non-verbal communication told me everything. You certainly got your dream from your vision board.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful and glamorous and elegant and makes you feel good and is comfortable and safe. But above all, sexy.
Definitely. 100%. There you go. Yeah. So what Susie is doing there is something that we use in conversations with client quite innocently. She's essentially practicing a little technique we call what, which, why. So what's the criteria? What's important to you? In choosing this service, product, what's important to you? And it's a nice, easy question to ask. Then, once we've got that criteria, you've mentioned a number of things here, and you play that back to the client. Which of those are most important to you? And they're likely to zero in on the things that are super important to them. And sometimes when they answer that question in a business sense, they will actually tell you what they don't want. They won't tell you what they do want. They will say, well, the last thing that I need is somebody that is not unreliable. So yes, they're asking for reliability, but actually what they're looking for, what they're really moving away from, is this fear of someone being unreliable, untrustworthy, or whatever it might be. And then finally, to understand more about that, you don't stop there, because that's where some people might stop. But what Susie is doing is saying, but why is that really important to you? And this is where you really get the real reason behind what somebody really, really wants. And actually, the little hesitation that I had, and you will get with clients, because what you're actually moving into here is a much deeper psychological reason, which people could feel a little bit uncomfortable with saying. Because if I were to say to you, well, I think it'll make me look good, maybe there's a little bit of that. It doesn't sound very good. I don't really want to say that. A client is not going to say to you, for example, I need to know I'm going to come out of this looking amazing. I want to make sure that my kudos, my status in my company through buying this service from you comes out of the top, because I've got these competitors, and I reckon doing this deal with you could give me great bonus points in the organization and potentially accelerate my career. they're not going to say that to you. So you've got to get somewhere near it, and you've got to understand that. And if you do understand that, you can subtly, carefully play that back, not in a very obvious way, but they know and get that you know what's important to them. That's very powerful. Again, if you just go for this very straightforward, you want this, here it is. You've asked for X, here it is, bang, bang, bang. That doesn't do it. Doesn't float the boat. You've got to embellish it. You've got to talk around it. You've got to talk into that feeling. You've got to create the feeling in the pitch. And that's what gives people this high feeling of, wow, you really understood, without patronizing me, without being too sycophantic. You have demonstrated you really understand what's important to me in doing this deal. I've got a lot of spend here. All eyes are on me. I'm signing off this budget. And I feel I've got you on my side, and you are going to deliver. You can't beat that. So
I think it's just like to use a metaphor, it's a little bit like a picture. If I was in the business of selling Harley Davidsons or Triumphs or whatever, it's one thing selling the features and benefits of that. But imagine this is a picture. If I frame a picture with a big, thick or ornate gold frame versus if I frame that same picture with a thin silver contemporary frame, the frame of the picture can't help but change how you see the picture and whether you can see that, I can see that fitting in my home or is to my taste. So it can be subtle but incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. Because remembering that very same Harley that I've bought has been bought by other people for very different reasons. If I'm a vet Harley rider and I want, a soft tail fat boy, because I've not had one before, but I know other Harleys and I know how they handle, I know how they ride, then that's a very different emotion you're tapping into there. Or maybe they've ridden other bikes before and they want to switch to Harley. So it's same product, but perhaps very different criteria. Not your criteria, not the criteria you think is important. And that's the mistake that people make. They bang on too much about what they like and what they think is important, and that might not be relevant in any shape or form. So one of the things that we talk about is trying to identify win themes. And this is a way of doing it. So speaking to speaking to influencer 1, speaking to influencer 2 and 3 and 4, now you're building up a picture using what, which, why, or variations on a theme of that are questioning to really uncover what's important to all these influencers. You then bring all that intelligence back in a war room document, and you go, what's the themes here? What's the patterns? What are the central themes that all of these influencers or decision makers really want? And of all those win themes that we've talked about, which of them would we say are of the highest importance to the client, and which of them are more unique to us? And if you think about that as a sort of 2x2 grid, if you've got very high importance to the client and unique to you, then that is definitely sits firmly in that win theme space.
And I think that's where a lot of teams actually struggle with, Martin, is that differentiation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might know I'm in the market for a motorbike, but why should I buy it from you versus someone else? So, truly differentiating themselves can be a challenge.
It is a very big challenge. And I would say in a lot of the services, in professional services, IT, outsourcing, etc., all of these, differentiation is very, very hard. We've done work with audit pitches. How much can the big four, in particular, how much can they differentiate their audit pitch? It's hard on the technology. All have the same technology, largely have the same, they're working the same compliance rules. So how do you provide that differentiation? And certainly one thing, you can actually even differentiate yourself by how you tell your story. So you could present the same set of criteria back to a client, but they hear it differently. And they're hearing a story back from you and thinking, wow, we really like the way you presented that right there. You're differentiating through the way you tell the story. And also you can differentiate because they can only get you here from company, whatever company you're representing and whatever company you're working for. That's the only place they can get you. And if you and your colleagues can differentiate yourself as a team to service that client, that it doesn't matter the fact the actual service or the product you're offering is similar, you are a differentiator. But only if you kind of think about that as a differentiator and demonstrate it through how you show up to meetings, how you pitch, how you build rapport, how you build relationships, etc., how you demonstrate empathy, understanding, whether or not they feel that you've got the kind of right number of war wounds and scars so that when it gets difficult, you're the person that's going to help them out and be able to find your way through potential inevitable problems they will get in implementing your ideas or your solution.
And I think just building on that message, Martin, of differentiation, as you say, it may be something in our product or service that is unique to us. And likelihood often it may well be either you as an individual or you as a team. And I think when you talk about appealing to the hearts and minds as well, one of the things which often we have to get the teams that we're coaching to think about is how they adapt their pitch so it actually appeals to different communication styles. A team comes to mind that I was working with a couple of months ago. They're a really seasoned team, technically brilliant, and in preparation for the pitch, it's clear that they've pretty much had all the same profile, and depending for the listeners here, depending on what communication styles profiles they're used to using, this team was very high blue or guardian or air. They were calm,
analytical,
very analytical, calm, detailed, logical, systematic, deep into the how on their messaging. Boy, had they done their homework, and they were certainly going to share every single bit of that. However, unfortunately, the client just happened to be completely different style, high red, driver, earth, big picture, concise, to the point, pragmatic, like a benefit-seeking missile. And their approach would not only have been too detailed and too boring and too safe, the team really needed more diversity of styles on the team itself, or greater behavioral flexibility to appeal to more than just their own style.
And that's another key thing, isn't it? And understanding the client, knowing your client, knowing what they want. That's another nod to that particular area as well. So we've understood the client. We've perhaps uncovered and refined and tested out our win themes. Then we need to build this into a story, build this into a narrative. Narrative is probably a better word, I suppose, because the narrative is the golden thread that runs through the entire presentation or pitch. You can have stories within a narrative. I might give you an example. You might be looking for some evidence, so I give you a client story. I once worked with a client who had this problem, which is similar to the one that the client has got you're pitching to. You talked to them about how perhaps the obstacles that they faced in that story, you talked about how you overcame them. So you can have stories within the narrative. The narrative is the biggest arc. How are we going to begin this narrative? And when we look to take all of our criteria that they've been talking about, so all the things they've said are really important, we're then going to build our story around that. And we are going to talk about, like in all stories, pretty much all stories all start with introducing some sort of broad context. Why are we here? What's brought us to that point? Why are we having this conversation today? What were the things that happened 3, 4, 5 months ago that led you to reaching out to asking for someone for help with this product or service? If you could speak to that, and possibly as you speak to that, you'll probably be discussing some of the changes that are going on in the world, or the pressures that are on their business, or the changes that are going on in their particular sector that has led to that. So very, very high net resonance with understanding how they've ended up there. The second part is then to be able to say, what do we think some of the obstacles and challenges might be that they're facing, that they're trying to overcome, or indeed in implementing this solution? Because with new ideas and new pitches come change. and change presents potential resistance. So demonstrating you understand what those resistances might be and how you overcome them is, again, shows you've got real empathy and understanding for their business. It could be something to do with culture, so you might talk about that. Then what we very quickly need to do is get to a place where they can see what the promised land looks like. Where would this take them? If we overcame those issues, where would it take us? What could we expect for ourselves? What would be the benefits that we would experience if we had implemented this solution for their business, for their staff, for their clients, for the customers they serve, and maybe the wider stakeholder group. So if you can be able to speak to that kind of then causes the client to go, oh, this is sounding good. This is sounding, you sound to understand what we do. You seem to understand the pressures and the changes are in our industry. You've painted a very clear picture of where we want to get to. So it begs the question, how are we going to get there? And what is this thing? How are we going to do it then? What are your ideas? But the mistake that people make is starting too early with that. If I start talking about my product and my service and how brilliant it is and how amazing it is, and it has this feature and that feature and this, and it's the fastest, shortest, biggest, most efficient, most effective, whatever it is, I don't even know if I need it. I don't even know if I'm interested, because you haven't set up the beginning of the story. I'm not interested in it because you haven't introduced me. It's like, imagine starting watching a film a third of the way in. I mean, you'd be, what the hell is going on here? Who is this person? Why is that person want to kill that other person? Why are they so upset with them? You'd just be confused and you wouldn't be interested. And so therefore we need to watch the start of the film. And if every start of a film, we're introduced to the context, we're introduced to the characters, we're introduced to the problems and the difficulties. We're introduced to the protagonist and the antagonist. And this is something in storytelling they call the hero's journey. Absolutely bulletproof methodology that's been used for countless years in building epic movies, dramas, and storybooks. So we're kind of loosely following that thread because we know psychologically it works. I'm now interested in this character overcoming the antagonist. I want them to win. I want it to be a happy ending. I'm rooting for them to win. And that's what makes you interested. So if I hear you and I like what you said, I want you to show me how we can win. And that's very powerful. That's not now starting to create some emotions. I'm much more interested. I now to get into the detail. And as you tell that detail, you then need to probably at some point provide, because it all sounds great, I need to have some evidence. How do I know it's going to work? Where have you done it before? Give me some examples. Give me the comfort that what you're saying that sounds good actually delivers results, the results that I want and need. And then when you've done that, you hopefully have taken your client to a place where they have some questions, additional questions, but they're now probably looking for, what's the happily ever after? What do we do next? How do we move this on? And that's essentially really what good stories are about in a business context. What do you say to that, Susie? You with me on this?
I'm so with you on that. And just coming at it from a slightly different angle, I often think of many of the pitch teams that I work with as Formula One cars. You know, they are high performance vehicles. They have the horsepower under the hood in terms of they're bright people. They have the right tyres on for the terrain and the weather. They have the right amount of fuel in the tank for the race. And indeed, they're in the driving seat and they know where the finish line is. But they're driving with their handbrake on. Mm. They fall into the classic pitching pitfalls. And in this glorious race to win, handbrake not only slows them down, it also damages the vehicle in terms of internal damage to them, in terms of their confidence, and damaging the eyes of the client and their credibility and their future relationship. And really what I was talking about there is just a tiny little metaphor. So in the same way that Martin was talking about this storytelling arc, even the use of a metaphor can light up different parts of the brain. And they say facts and data lights up 2 parts of the brain. Stories and metaphors will light up 7 parts of the brain. And it's really interesting, often when I'm working with people that maybe I haven't seen for years and years and years and years, they very rarely remember some of the technical stuff we've talked about, but they will always remember a story or a metaphor. It increases the stickability of the message. So I think, yeah, stories and the power of metaphors and analogies.
And then they give people meaning, and particularly your metaphor there. Good metaphors like that, people will actually jump in on the metaphor. They'll expand it and they'll start I mean, some cars in some settings go well, but in other tracks they don't. And people will start to embellish and they use it. You've just got to be brave to use it. We find a lot of, particularly people in sales, they seem to have this sort of reticence to want to use the types of things you've done for fear that it's sounding a bit fluffy. It's not. As long as it's relevant and you get to the point quickly, you actually help the client understand what you mean. You give meaning to the messages you're giving. They go, okay, now I understand. Okay, I like that. Yeah, that does make sense to me. So they are indeed very powerful, and we're constantly encouraging. We often say, won't we, to clients, what could we use as a metaphor here? Maybe this is a bit like building a house. You have a strong foundation. Driving a car. This is a bit like going on holiday. Whatever it might be, you need to do several things. Let's talk to those. You need to plan, decide where you're going to go. You can just start to, it's not, look, horses for courses, different situations require different things. I wouldn't go into a board meeting and start telling long-winded stories because it's not right for that environment. But certain situations where you've got a bit more time, absolutely entirely appropriate, and they're very, very powerful.
A picture paints 1,000 words, Martin.
Every single time. Why don't you say memorable? So going through a few other things, once you've got those messages, you do need to understand why or how we can make those messages persuasive. So to you, you're excited, you're motivated, you think you've got a great win theme, you've got some really clear, as far as you're concerned, some clear features and benefits, but are you making those persuasive? And I think that is, again, an area which we constantly are helping clients improve. You've got a message there. I can see the logic, but are you presenting it in such a way that I hear it first time, understand it, and go, I feel persuaded by what you're saying? And so there are certain building blocks to making a message persuasive. And then I would suggest that relevance is very high up on that list. Speaking to a previous stated need, something the client has already told you. You've spoken about the attrition that you're currently experiencing. Highly competitive area. You're losing a lot of people. You are not only losing people, you're losing your most talented people. So you're talking to something which is very much high on their list of concerns. Then you talk to them about how you're going to help them. We've got a product, service, idea called X, and it specifically deals with retention, whatever that might be. I'm interested now because you're solving a problem that is very pertinent to me, and I agree with because I've told you about that. You then very quickly need to tell me about why this particular solution you've got to help with attrition and increase engagement is different. How does it work? What does it do? What are the real benefits or the business impact, as we prefer to say? How will the business find a positive impact? And so as you describe these features of this product or service, you kind of oscillate back and forth between feature and benefit, making sure that you're using language so you might be asking yourself the question, why this particular service in this particular way? Well, there's 3 key ways, for example, we believe you will make an immediate impact on your business. The first of these is X. The second is this. And thirdly, it's this. So very clear, focused messaging. I need to hear it, and I need to hear it very, very clearly. It drives me nuts when I'm hearing people present and I'm having to work like doubly hard to understand what the real benefit is to me.
You know what I want to know, Martin? I want to know with him.
Exactly.
Which stands for?
What's in it for me? Indeed. It's the so what factor.
So what factor?
The little tool we would always suggest you use when you're hearing and rehearsing a pitch. If you can keep saying into your head, so what, so what, so what, over and over again, challenging each other, you will eventually come up with something which is a lot more concrete on a benefit to the client. Test it out. Go further than you think you need to, because often you do. Whilst the features, because you're so excited and so close to them, so obvious to you, they're not so obvious to the client. And you need to make sure that that benefit is in their world, not in yours. Very important. So get clear on that.
The bad news is, your clients don't really care about your products or services. They only care about what your products or services will do for them. And that will always fall into 4 categories. Every single benefit will all come down to how am I as the client going to gain, save, protect / manage risk, or look good?
Absolutely. So that's the final bit. And then really from there, you are putting your pitch together. You need a structure. You need to think about how you're going to structure the message. And also too much to go through here right now. But you do need a clear structure, a framework. Whatever you use, have a very clear beginning, have a meaning, have a middle to that. Deliver on your promise. Make sure you summarize what you told them. That is signaling and signposting your way through a pitch is super, super important. And again, people get on their hobby horse, they're telling their story, they're getting excited, but it's not logical to the client. You have to be very, very clear. Here's what I'm going to tell you today. Deliver on that promise, tell them, and then tell them what you told them. You heard this sort of adage before, but there's a little bit more to it than that. And again, a bit too much to explain in this short podcast here, but have a structure, have a framework that is absolutely ironclad, and that test it out. As we say, you collate your material, test the content, and then rehearse. Those are our next 3 disciplines. Make sure that you're bringing in suitable material that is going to support your message. Make sure you've tested the content. It actually is relevant by doing test panels, and have people come in and listen to your pitch who've not been part of building it. Don't go into a pitch blindly thinking that this is going to be brilliant, because in your head, it's like singing a song. If you're not a singer, every song sings great in your head, doesn't it? Oh, I've got this nailed. And then you've got to blurt it out on a microphone, a karaoke bar, and suddenly it sounds awful. All right. So make sure that the receiving audience are actually hearing something they need to hear in a way that is very clear. So rehearse, get feedback, tell the panel what you want them to listen out for, and do that 2 or 3 times. If you've worked for 6-7 months on a big opportunity, it's crazy for me that people can't find the time to spend, several 3 or 4 hours of time to rehearse. It's the best investment you'll ever make. Absolutely. We see this countless times where we take a team and the first time they pitch, they think, oh my goodness me, we're in trouble here. And then 3 hours later, they win. We do these competitions on our Pitching to Win program. And it's amazing how teams that are right at the back end then come forward and win. Through rehearsal, you refine it, get better. You get better at refining the story, but you get better at telling the story as well. And that's our next element is the performance element of it, which we've alluded to with our storytelling. But it's also who you are being whilst you're telling that story. If you're so concerned about getting the words out, and as you say, you're not letting your face know you're excited, you're not showing emotion, you don't have much vocal variety, you're speaking in a monotone voice, which is pretty flat, you're not speaking in different emotions based on what you're saying. So, if something is serious, be serious. If you're talking about a hopeful message, sound hopeful. If you're talking about the promised land, the end product, the end result, and it's exciting and inspiring, be inspiring. Be the emotional state you want somebody to feel. So this is a very important element in terms of performance, difficult obviously to talk about here completely, but that becomes a very, very key part, being able to tell the story in a powerful, compelling way. It's disappointing and frustrating to see intelligent, smart people have really great ideas, but just not present them well. And it is a great shame because logically, the client should be buying from them, but they fail to engage emotionally through good storytelling and presentation. Unfortunately, the client could go with a more inferior offer because you failed to capture that emotion. So I think that's pretty much what we wanted to cover in this session. I think just the last thing to talk a little bit about win rate optimization. If you want to kind of look at that, one of the things that we would say that to think about the pitch, first of all, is one element of a long series of different things that creates that optimized effort that you put into from beginning to end. So we talked about knowing your client. If the quality of your questions at the front end when you first get the opportunity are poor, you're going to get poor quality answers. Poor quality answers leads to a poor quality pitch and story. You can't differentiate. High quality questions drive high quality insights, which drive a much richer, more meaningful story, which translates into a much more powerful pitch that resonates with the client. So you can see pitch is just one part of the system. It's not the whole thing. So look at look at the multiple aspects. Also, that don't confuse effort with effectiveness. When somebody says, "Yeah, I put loads of effort into this," and we're giving them feedback, you don't realise, Martin, how I've been working on this and I put all this work in, and it feels all this feedback you're giving me. And I went, "Look, I'm sorry, but you can't confuse effort with effectiveness. You might have put a lot of effort in, but it's not effective." So we have to be quite brave as pitch coaches with teams to say that, look, I appreciate the effort you have been putting into this, but what you're about to present is just not going to be effective. So be aware of the difference between the two. Effort doesn't get you results. Effort plus effectiveness is what gives you really great results. And then there is the reframing of when things don't go well, what do you do with it? When you win, what do you do with it? Recycling the learning for other times is very, very powerful. That's the way you improve your optimization. That's what we're looking for. Okay, if you won that, let's investigate. We tend to investigate more about losses and less about the wins. But the wins can tell you a lot. So inquire in the direction you want to go. Why did we win that? Why is that particular pitch team doing better than someone else pitching much the same products in the same or service line or services in the same market as ours? Why are they doing better? What is it they're doing? And what we try and help clients do is really understand where those differences are and understand. Then the more negative, I guess, is when you lose, then why did you lose? We earlier had a conversation today, Susie, before we started this call. I met a client this morning where they were talking about somebody who had come to speak to them and they didn't get the deal, and I was kind of asking about it. And it became very, very clear that they felt that the person who was doing the selling just wasn't understanding. They were too busy trying to impress. And whilst they were, on the surface, impressive, didn't leave the client feeling good. Client didn't understand them, thought there was a lot of ego involved. So learning those things, understanding where people inadvertently go wrong. People you don't set out to do these things, but you end up doing them and you get into these patterns of behavior. Getting someone else to do that win-loss review is very, 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 very powerful. And then think about how you can get so brilliant at doing this through this repeatable discipline, not heroic effort, that wins the day. High quality, repeatable disciplines that take you closer towards the client choosing you over the competition, not just this heroic effort. You've got to be doing things right to make sure you get the a much better quality result. What do you think, Susie? Is there anything you'd add to that?
I think you nailed it, Martin. When it comes to optimizing your win rate, discipline, challenge, and reflection discipline to follow the disciplines.
Yes, good point.
The challenge panel, the only thing I'd add to that is making sure that's different from rehearsal, making sure you've got people on the challenge panel that know what good looks like, but they've not actively been involved in the pitch, so that they don't have skin in the game, so they can have that emotional objectivity and put themselves in the shoes of the client and see it through the eyes of the client. And then, because that's a bit like a pre-mortem rather than a post-mortem that people actually do. And then, the final thing that you said in terms of reflection, that constant improvement in terms of continuous improvement around win, learn, change, and that increases your conscious competence. So I think they're the three elements I would certainly agree with.
No matter how long you've been doing this, remain coachable.
Yeah.
Because we go in and work with pitch teams all the time, and the young bucks, girls and guys, super enthusiastic, very open, lap up all the learning, often actually end up doing a better job because they take the strategies we've given them and just go and apply it. And then you've got the kind of old dog, new tricks type of thing. We had this recently, do you remember?
Yep.
Where the guy actually said to me, early part of the program, old dog, new tricks. And I said, well, I'm afraid, sir, that's something for you to overcome. Not for me. That's something you've got to decide whether you feel you can be open to something new. And he did. Oh, some little bit of encouragement. And ended up winning because he was willing to embrace some new ways of thinking, acting, and behaving. So do remain coachable. Don't see it as a weakness. See it as a strength. The best get better through having good coaching and being open. And what matters more than anything to anybody who's put considerable amount of effort, blood, sweat, and tears into a pursuit for any client, whether it's your own business or you're working for someone else and you've got big targets, etc., or you're a partner in a professional services firm, you owe it to yourself and that final third of the pitch to be absolutely outstanding. And the only way you do that is by being coached and being open and constantly refining your approach. Susie, this has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it as always. We both know we really share a huge amount of passion for this. We love to see people winning. And you and I both know when we work with clients, either in simulations or on live pitches, we're as motivated as they are to want to win. And I just love seeing ugly stories become beautiful. I love watching a nervous, anxious individual blossom into this confident presenter. It's fantastic to see a team that is perhaps tense, maybe not working as well together, suddenly come together as a pitch team to go and present to their client where the rubber meets the road, belly to belly, eyeball to eyeball, and do an amazing job. It is the most fantastic thing when it works. And it is beautiful to watch. And I am forever excited every time I work on any pitch to want to get that result. It is arguably one of the things that you and I do together, Susie, that gets the most immediate return on investment and immediate result. A lot of the other things we do in leadership and change take a time to get that result, whereas this, it's there to be seen right in front of you.
And of course, we do like a bit of instant gratification, Martin.
Well, we love that.
Yes.
Who doesn't, right?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
So yes, getting that instant result is just fantastic.
And I think just one final point I'd make, and I think you alluded to it at the beginning. I know we're talking about this in the context of pitching or presenting a message, but when you look at some of the core concepts we've talked about here, this comes into play in every kind of communication that we could possibly have, because most of the communication we have involves trying to influence somebody or a group of people to do something or take on board something. And as we know, Martin, people that are good at communicating like this get a disproportionate amount of credibility.
Absolutely. Further advance in their career, all sorts of benefits. So our wish for you is you take some nuggets from this session, go and apply them and have fun pitching your ideas to your prospective clients or even internally in your own organization. So we wish you well. Until next time, have fun. Happy winning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.